Just quite curious, what made you choose children's literature rather than like adult literature, I guess?
I think I always loved children's literature, and especially when I was at university, actually. I think I was reading so much law material that my brain didn't really have room for adult fiction. So I sort of really returned to these books I'd loved when I was a child, which are actually very enjoyable as an adult. I think the best children's books can be read by anyone.
Nice, yeah.
So I read a lot of Diana Wynne Jones at university, who's this brilliant fantasy author, and a lot of Joan Aiken and Ursula Le Guin and Susan Cooper and all these brilliant authors, all these women writing fantasy. And I think when I started to write, my voice kind of almost like unconsciously, but also consciously, it was imitating theirs and the way they told a story, and that naturally lent my writer's voice to children's fiction.
Hey everyone, welcome to Cambridge from the Inside. We're here with a new guest today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Zohra Nabi, and thank you for having me.
Nice. And today we're really talking about your time as a student, what you've gone on to do. Really cool story, because now like you're a published author. This is one of your books.
Yeah.
And yeah, read it recently. It was really good. I really liked it. I was a big Percy Jackson fan growing up. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So and it had like similarities.
Oh, thank you. That's very complimentary.
Nice, yeah, and it was. I also liked how like it was from like different cultures, but we can get into that later.
Yeah.
So, firstly, can you just like for anyone who like doesn't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah. So I graduated from here back in 2020. And then I sold my first book when I was 22. It went on to be Waterstone's Children's Book of the Month in May 2023, and it was a top 10 children's bestseller. I've since published its sequel, the sequel to The Kingdom Over the Sea, The City Beyond the Stars, and I'm about to bring out my first book in a new series called Deep Dark.
Nice, wow, that's so cool. And thanks. I think finishing the book, you can kind of tell there's a whole world.
Yeah, and on a bit of a cliffhanger. Yeah, that was really fun, actually. It's a really fun part of writing a sequel, of feeling like you can go more into a world you've already created rather than having to set up a lot of world building. So always a lot of fun to write. Nice.
And at your time at Cambridge and Trinity Hall, what were you studying?
I was studying law. Okay. So a lot of people assume I did English or history or something like that, but no, I was a law student.
Nice. And how did you find like studying law at Cambridge? Because I don't know, maybe it's a bit cliche of me, but when I think of like a law student, I don't necessarily think of a writer.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. It was very hard. It's a lot of work. I was working a lot of the time, but it taught me so much that I think it actually is really useful for being a writer. I think one of the main things you need to make it a career is the ability to just get up and work and be able to put words to a page without feeling afraid. And that's one of the things a degree in law really gives you, I think, is this ability to write with confidence, because of the sheer amount that you're reading and the sheer amount that you're having to produce while you're here. I also think law is a really great way of encountering stories. So every case that you read, and I think the degree at Cambridge is one where you're encouraged to read a lot of cases, is its own story. It's got its own cast of characters. It's got its own situation, which has set up the problem at hand. And I think reading those and encountering all these problems from different walks of life was really great preparation for writing my own books. I mean, even something, a subject like contract or equity, where you wouldn't expect there to be, a really interesting saga at the heart of it, but there might be a sort of family dispute or a separation of two former best friends, something which is just a really interesting slice of human life.
Nice. So would you say when you were doing your law course, you really noticed like the narratives of like people's lives within like cases?
Yeah, I think so. I always loved reading the facts of cases, which aren't always necessarily crucial to the problem question that you're being set by
Yeah.
your tutors. But I was always, I think, from the areas of law I was interested in, especially like while I was here, I was really enjoyed studying sort of administrative law and the human rights papers. And I think reading the stories at the heart of those and how things had come to that was a really good part of the degree for me.
Nice. And it's not like you've kind of left law and focused on the writing, because you continued studying law right after the undergrad.
Yeah, so I took a year off in between my undergraduate degree and my master's, mainly because of the pandemic and because I wanted to apply with my final year grades. And I sort of wrote my first book in that time and sold it just before I started my master's degree. And so then I went off to Oxford to do the BCL, which is a law master's. And I had to edit my book throughout that year. Sort of my editor very kindly made me a schedule which factored in my coursework and my exams and also the times when I would be editing a book, which was really useful. Although a bit frightening if I then started to sort of blur the lines or go out of what I was supposed to be working on. But that was okay. And then I had a couple of years of writing full time. And then I've just started a PhD in legal history, which I'm studying an area of law, which is the poor laws, really fascinating stuff from the sort of 18th century to the 19th century, which I really enjoy.
Nice. Wow. What a journey.
Yeah. It's funny to think I was ever going to do anything but writing now. It's sort of shaped my life so much. I almost can't remember a time when I wasn't thinking about, the next book or what I was going to do next or write next.
So, the idea of like wanting to become a writer, an author, was that something you've always had?
I think it was always a sort of childhood dream. When I was a child, I wanted to be an author. But I think it very, it didn't feel like a grown-up job. I think when I was a child, I didn't know anyone who was an author. I didn't even know anyone who was in publishing. I did grow up very near Jacqueline Wilson, so I used to see her on while I was walking to school. But she was such a sort of legendary figure that she almost didn't feel aspirational because she's Jacqueline Wilson. I think I can't remember when I started to take it seriously. I think it's probably in that year between my undergraduate and my master's, I did an online creative writing course. And I think maybe I thought once I did that course, because people were talking about it like it was something achievable and they were explaining the ways that you could go about getting yourself a publisher and an agent, I suddenly started thinking, oh, this is something I could do. This is something I can aim for. And also because I had my master's degree, I knew fairly early on I had a place on the master's course I wanted to be on. And so I thought, right, well, I'll just do this before I do that. And then I probably won't get anywhere, but I'll have made a start on it. And then maybe when I'm, in my a bit older, in my later 20s or my 30s, I can revisit this. And I wasn't expecting at all to be where I was by the time I started my master's, but it did then feel like more of a thing that I could achieve.
Nice. What do you think is like the biggest obstacle for most people who might want to get into writing but don't end up doing so?
I think it's an interesting one because I would say time, because most of us have to get jobs. We don't have the luxury of being able to sit around for hours and write. And I think a book does need space. It does need enough time where you're not doing anything to and just sort of staring into space to make it happen. But then I don't think equally I don't see people who are able to just do nothing but write. I don't think they necessarily have a creative advantage. I don't think they're necessarily, build. I don't think they're necessarily building anything in that time. I definitely don't think you should see, I have a full-time job, therefore I can't be a writer or I can't do this. I definitely don't think anyone should think like that. But I think we do have to acknowledge that it is harder when you have financial concerns and responsibilities. I was very lucky that in that time, because I was still quite young, I was living with my parents, and it was it was the pandemic. So even though I was working online, there was no real way I could get the sort of legal work I'd been planning to do during that year. So I recognise I was very fortunate during that time.
I'm not an expert. It reminds me of Franz Kafka. Because he was quite big on writing in the evenings.
Yeah.
But then he was also, I think he was a lawyer, or he worked in bureaucracy during the day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it was law. I think or something similar. And then because of the main point is that because of his day job, he got his writing done in the evening, which I think is a common problem.
I think Charles Dickens was a legal clerk at one point, right? It definitely is doable. I did something called London Writers Salon, which organises sort of Zoom writing sessions at times in the day where if you are working a 9 to 5, you can join and write along with other writers in silence. It's a great initiative. But I think the time, and it's almost not so much time as it is brain space as well, I think. Being, you come home from a day job and you're tired, and it's hard to put words on the page. But again, I know people who've done it very successfully. One of my friends is still a full-time lawyer and publishes 2 books a year. I don't know how she does it, but there are definitely people who make that work.
Nice. No, yeah, I was living with a research fellow, and he was saying how yes, like a 9 to 5 does take up a lot of time, but then there's also an issue if you're given complete freedom. And I think it can, like, I can imagine for some artists or writers, if they were to have nothing, no obligations throughout the day, then it might be quite difficult to, I don't know, without that routine, get yourself writing.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's what I was trying to say. I think you don't feel like in order to write a book you need to take time off to write. Like sort of lock yourself away in an attic and think that you've got to sort of you can't work and you can't do anything else but write. That's not true at all. That's never been how I've worked until it actually became my job. And I think there's a real inspiration to be had by encountering the world, and one of the ways you do that is through work. Like, I think you've always got to be meeting new people and having new experiences. I think a lot, if I hadn't done the degree that I did, if I'd decided, okay, well, now I've got my publishing contract, I'm not going to do my master's degree anymore. If I wouldn't have half of the inspiration that I have to write my books now.
That's really cool. It's nice when your creative side hustle overlaps with like your like day-to-day.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Nice. So just a bit more about yourself, like kind of going right from the beginning. Like, can you tell us a bit more about like where you grew up, and were there lawyers in the family, or did anyone in your family go to university, and like how did you end up coming to Cambridge?
Yeah, so I grew up in southwest London.
Whereabouts?
Kingston.
Okay, nice.
Do you know it?
I don't know friends from Balham, so
oh yeah, nice.
Slightly close.
Yeah, and I think I should probably say, like, in many ways I came from like a very privileged home. I went to a really good grammar school. My parents had both been to university. I was coming from a place of like real advantage, I think, and I try never to forget that. A lot of lawyers in my family. My parents are both lawyers. My uncle's a lawyer. My dad's cousins are lawyers. Like, it's sort of in all different areas of law as well.
Yeah.
My dad was a social housing lawyer. My mum is a regulatory lawyer. My uncle's landlord and tenant. Like, lots of different areas. But a lot of lawyers. That was really what I grew up around. And I really didn't think I was going to do law. I thought I was going to do a creative degree, but I got bitten by the bug and I found it too interesting and I ended up doing it. And actually, while I was at university, my sisters banned law chat from around the table because they were like, it's getting too much. There's too many. Now you outnumber us. This is too much. So yeah, I definitely grew up hearing things about the law, hearing about cross-examinations and, hearing about especially growing up with, at the time, both my parents were legal aid lawyers, and growing up hearing about the cases that they did and the people who were involved was always really interesting to me. And I think really, I think my dad especially never let us forget, there, but for the grace of God go I, you're not there. Anyone can find themselves in a situation where they need the help of the law and they need the help of legal aid.
No, of course, yeah. That's really cool. It sounds like quite an engaging environment to grow up in.
Yeah, definitely. With all that around, it was, and definitely if I was in trouble as a teenager, you don't want to be at the barrel end of two lawyers giving you the third degree. I really remember being tripped up by my dad when I was giving some excuse for something, and I was like, I'm not in the dock. You're not trying to pin me.
Nice. Oh wow, yeah, that does. I can imagine arguments with the parents would be being very tough when they're both lawyers.
It's good training though. And it's funny, we used to call my sister my defence counsel because she would always, maybe this points to me that the fact that law wasn't the right career for me, because she would always be the one to step in and put the counter argument in my favour if need be.
Nice. And were you always thinking of applying to Cambridge?
Yeah, I think it was always presented as an option to me. Like I said, I went to a grammar school where people were all of us were encouraged to aim as high as we could. And I did this thing at Cambridge. I don't know if it still exists, the Cambridge Sixth Form Law course, which was a week where I got to stay in St Catherine's. Nice. And just do a sort of taste a week of law lectures, or I think a taste of 3 days of law lectures maybe. I remember I got the time off school to do it. And it was all free. It was completely funded. It was a really great initiative. And I just found everything really interesting. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to, but even the papers like contract, which maybe weren't necessarily for me, I could see the interesting side of them. And I connected with the lectures in a way that I hadn't really connected with, I know, a history lecture or an English lecture that I'd sampled before. I would really recommend engaging with those kind of events. I think they give you a really good idea of what university study is like, which maybe is harder to get from A levels.
No, yeah, that is really good advice. And yeah, if anyone's watching who's in secondary school or sixth form, going on either the Cambridge or Oxford websites, and I think it's prospective students, and go and click on upcoming events, and you'll have a list of all of these events that both universities provide, like residentials, the one that you were talking about. So then once you got in, once you were starting studying at Cambridge, how did you find your time here? How was Trinity Hall?
Trinity Hall was a really lovely college. I had a really lovely group of friends here. I really felt that it was a really lovely place to live and to study. It was really hard work. I'd never worked for such a sustained period in my life. I think that's just because I was very set on a first. I don't think I needed to work as hard as I did. I would maybe, if I could go back, I would tell my younger self, stay, don't put too much pressure on yourself. But I did really enjoy my time here. I think it's important to mention, while I was here, there were several scandals involving the college, which maybe did affect my time here a bit. I think the college has gone some way to putting those right, but I think it was a kind of sobering reminder that there are, if you go to an institution like this, there are things you can encounter which are less than ideal.
No, yeah, of course. And yeah, the university and the college has gone for a lot of steps moving from that and trying to make the university a better place. We haven't touched this beforehand, but I know Trinity Hall provides a variety of like law funding schemes. Is that the case? Did you?
Yeah, I massively benefited from that.
Nice.
So basically, if you get a first, there is a huge amount of money available, which is great. So it's and if you get a first in your final year, they will there is a fund which can pay for your master's degree, which was enormously helpful for me.
And that's college specific,
it's college specific, not university specific. There are university scholarships for law, but the Trinity Hall has incredibly generous law scholarships. It was almost like having a summer job, basically, the amount of money that you can make.
So is this like funding for the undergrad, or if you're doing an undergrad here and then wanting to do further study?
If you're doing an undergrad and want to do further study, and that doesn't have to be at Cambridge as well. That can be at a different institution. So my degree at Oxford was funded by Trinity Hall, or by a scholarship that I got from Trinity Hall.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really, and something that probably prospective students don't know if they're wanting to study law and not sure which college to apply for. There's a huge incentive to
absolutely, and I think people don't know it necessarily when they come here. I think I don't know if it still exists, but there used to be a student room pros and cons of every college, and one of the things said that there was funding available at Trinity Hall, and so I had a look at their handbook, which goes into some detail on how much money there is, and I thought, okay, well, it is contingent on you getting a first, and again, that is quite a lot of pressure to put on a 19-year-old. Yeah. But if you think you can, it is definitely worth it.
Nice. So I was just wondering, because primarily we work in the outreach and missions team in Trinity Hall, and when we go to schools and talk to students, a lot of students have like preconceptions and myths about Cambridge. Was wondering, when you're applying, did you have any preconceptions about the university?
I think I had this image, I think on the one hand, of, very hard work and a really kind of prestigious academic institution. I mean, it was sort of, I think when I was a teenager, that was right at the beginning of the dark academia trend. Nice, So I was seeing all these aesthetic pictures of Cambridge and thinking, wow, that looks amazing. Yeah. And also that with that very like, Mabel's, champagne, that kind of culture, which seemed, it seems remote, obviously, but it also seems exciting.
Exactly.
You just think, wow, I could, what would it be like to be in that world for 3 years?
Nice. Yeah, exactly. I think it's a really good way of putting it, that once you're studying here, it's that those experiences are available for everyone. It's not remote within the university. Yeah,
I think it's an interesting one. I mean, obviously, what you don't realise is that Mabel's cost money, but there are ways you can do it. Like, so for example, in Mabel season, I would work. So I'd work at one Mabel, and then I would use my fee from that to go to another one. Nice. And I'd do half on, half off as well, which is where you can work for half the night and go to the ball for half the night. So I remember I had a great job where I got to go to Emmanuel College, the Mabel, for the first half until midnight. And then from midnight till 6 a.m. when it finished, I was the fire steward at the outdoor cinema. So I just watched films for the rest of the night. Oh, nice. And was still able to participate, which was a great gig. So there are definitely ways to do it. But yeah, there are also, there are also students with you who can just pay the money for the ticket and just go to as many parties as they want all week.
Yeah, and there are like, depending on your financial circumstances, there are access tickets which are at a lower cost.
Oh really? Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. That was probably the only reason why I went to my ball. But yeah, I think, and also like I remember as a student, there are. I mean, I wasn't really a big black tie fan. I didn't
Mm.
mind, but if you did like dressing up, there are a lot of events that are black tie that are at a very like a very tiny entry fee. Like it just seems like any society will have a
Yeah,
dinner or an event, and you could rock up.
the Law Society used to have a lot of those.
Yeah.
And I think if you were part of the Law Society as well, you didn't have to pay to attend, I don't think.
Yeah. So
I might be remembering that wrong. But those were always really good, and they were always a good way of networking with people and meeting other lawyers and hearing about their experiences.
yeah, yeah. I don't think I'll ever wear a suit as many times as I did
No.
as a student, and it was fun. It was fun at the time, but
Yeah, I do have a collection of nice dresses that I was
Nice.
digging through recently. It does feel quite fairy tale, and it is a nice part of coming here, the kind of ability to romanticize, I suppose.
yeah, and though they are things that are kind of like to do with societies or events, so they're not obligatory. Can't speak obligatory at all.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. And I think you can find your level as well. Like if a really ostentatious ball doesn't appeal to you, like you've got like your college parties, which is free to attend, and I'll be in the bar, and everything will be subsidized, and you can just mingle and chat with people. There's no you're not going to miss out if you're not the kind of person who wants to stay out till 6 a.m.
Yeah, like so. Oh yeah, I might be up for a black tie event every now and then, but I never went to formal hall just personally, and I think it's those kind of like choices of like working out what you want to do and what's available to you.
Definitely. I mean, I was in the chapel choir here, so I got
Nice.
free formals
Oh,
as
there you go,
as payment. So which was very odd as well. Sort of twice a week having a 3-course
Really?
dinner. Yeah, or I don't think I went to all of them, but
Yeah.
because it was basically working. You'd be rehearsing and
Yeah,
then
that's true.
singing in the service, and it would go through dinner here. So then it was great to just go and not have to. I mean, once I moved out in second and third year, sometimes I would just go and cook for myself if I didn't have the time to stay until 9 p.m. It was a great way to chat to everyone else in choir or anyone else who'd come to formal that evening. And the food at Trinity Hall is really good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. The food here is really, really good. So if that is I mean, I've never had food at any other colleges
yeah.
at Cambridge, but
I feel like Trinity Hall is up there.
Okay.
Of the formals I've experienced around here. One of the fun things I did while I was here was do formal swaps with other people.
Oh, nice.
Where, because I mean, it is cheaper than a meal out, or at least it was when I was here.
Yeah, it still is, yeah.
And so, like, going to someone else's college and experiencing their formal, bringing them here and having them experience yours, that was always really fun.
Nice. So we also in the outreach team, we run a program, like a residential and year-long program called You'll Fit In, for prospective students. I mean, it is what it says on the tin. We're trying to show students how, from wherever they're from, everyone who's curious about their subject and wants to apply to Cambridge will fit in here. I was just wondering, when you were a student, was fitting in ever something that you would think about, or was it just something that never crossed your mind?
I think it was definitely something that was on my mind a little bit. I think everyone wonders, will I make friends? Will I? I mean, I didn't. What I did have, which I was very lucky to have, is I had some people I've been friends with at school at different colleges. So even when I came to Trinity Hall, I knew that in a pinch, I'd be able to visit someone else. And I think the kind of residential schemes and things that are run, maybe like make friends on those, chat to people, just so you've got someone who is like, okay, I can go and say hi to you. But I think I definitely I think you can always find your crowd and you can always find your people. And I had really lovely friends here who I really loved, and still I'm very good friends with. I think the main sort of, I guess, culture shock when I came to Trinity Hall is I'd never been somewhere so white before. I went to school in London. Like I'd never felt like a minority really until I came to Cambridge, and I was sort of on the or at least it felt like, maybe this isn't true, it felt like the first time in my life I'd really been on the receiving end of maybe slightly ignorant comments or misinformed comments, not just from other students, but from some of the staff as well. Like not the stuff like teaching, like fellows, I mean. Which was interesting. I think you would encounter that anywhere. I think it was just an experience for me, but then also I made lots of connections in Cambridge. Like there was this organisation called Fly, which was for sort of Cambridge women of colour, like across the university, and meeting other people in Trinity Hall. And there were like really good things like that, which were a great way to sort of connect with people.
Nice, yeah. Sorry, something in my throat. So if you had, so for like upcoming prospective students who are in a similar position, on the fence about Cambridge, or like are unsure of, I don't know, like they don't want to, like they're unsure about going to a university that has a large, like, or where they would be a minority and would rather stay at a place where they're not a minority. Like what advice would you have for those students?
Oh, it's difficult. I don't like, you've got to do what you're comfortable with, but I definitely think don't be put off from coming here, because like you will find your people, and there are different societies and different things here that can support you. And I always just think you should like never be you should try not to be afraid of going somewhere just because you're going to feel different. And I recognise but I did have advantages that helped sort of counter that. So I don't want to be too prescriptive, I suppose. But I think the scene at Cambridge is actually like, I had friends who were similar backgrounds to me. I had like friends from different backgrounds. It was you do find your people, and you do you do kind of like that like I don't think it will stop. Like I don't think I ever felt like I couldn't participate in things.
Yeah, like it's so like there are experiences that one may face if they're a kind of minority group in Cambridge, but it's not like those experiences aren't, you don't think, am I right in saying that you don't think they're big enough to prevent someone in applying?
Definitely not. I don't think you should ever be put off from aiming for something because of your background. Absolutely not. I've never want to suggest that. But I suppose it was more coming from a place of reflecting on my time. I don't think it would have been better or worse anywhere else necessarily. I don't know. It was just I was just trying to think about when I thought about fitting in, what were the things that made me feel at home, and what were the things that make you feel alienated. And I think those things are going to be present everywhere you go through life. You know, unfortunately it doesn't change when you get into the world of work, I guess. I don't know. It's a difficult thing to navigate, but the sort of community and friends I made at Cambridge were really great.
Nice. And for those who are like trying to choose which college, and like you don't have to say Trinity Hall's like really, like, because you know, if you think that it doesn't really matter which college, that's also fine. But just wondering, how did you find like the community in Trinity Hall when you were here?
Yeah, it was really lovely. There was a lot of sort of mutual support, especially among the law students. I was really close with two of the other lawyers here specifically. We were really a tight-knit group, and we really sort of supported each other through, the difficult degree. And so that felt really great. And I think, and like I said, being part of the choir here was really nice. And it did feel, and I think because it's quite a small college, or a fairly small college, the upper years quite well as well when you come here. And I knew the year belows as well. And when we were running the Law Society, we really tried to make an effort to help the younger years with things we'd felt we struggled with. So we had I remember we ran a session that was how to read a case, where we just which you do a little bit, I think, as part of the course, but quite late on in term, by which point it's sort of, a bit. So just right at the beginning, you're like, look, this is, here's Westlaw, here's the case report, here's how to navigate the reports, just stuff like that. We were just trying to make them feel like they could come to us if they had any questions or if they needed help.
Nice, that's really nice. Yeah, there is always, I think, you have a different relationship with those who are doing the same course, because they get what you're going through.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a sense of camaraderie.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's really cool. So moving now more a bit towards your writing career now, can you give us a bit a exposition of what book? Yeah, well, I mean, I think you've written several books, and how many have you written?
Yeah, so I've now written 4. So I've got the 2 that are published, the one that is yet to be published, and one which is with my editors now. Oh, I see that. I've written, those are 4 full-length books, and then I've also written 4 educational books, so shorter fiction, which is used in schools to sort of help children with reading comprehension.
Oh, nice! Wow, that's so cool.
Yes, I guess that makes it 8 now. But those, I love writing those books. They're really fun, and they're always really fun little stories to come up with.
And what made I'm just quite curious. What made you choose children's literature rather than adult literature, I guess?
I think I always loved children's literature, and especially when I was at university, actually. I think I was reading so much law material that my brain didn't really have room for adult fiction. So I sort of really returned to these books I'd loved when I was a child, which are actually very very enjoyable as an adult. I think the best children's books can be read by anyone.
Nice, yeah.
So I read a lot of Diana Wynne Jones at university, who's this brilliant fantasy author, and a lot of Joan Aiken and Ursula Le Guin and Susan Cooper, and all these brilliant authors, all these women writing fantasy. And I think when I started to write, my voice kind of almost unconsciously, but also consciously, it was imitating theirs and the way they told a story, and that naturally lent my writer's voice to children's fiction.
No, I see. That's really cool.
Thanks.
I really, I was actually thinking that when I was reading your book, because I haven't read a children's book for a while, and I was surprised when I was reading it that there was a lot to enjoy as an adult. I think. I mean, if it still really felt like it could be adult fiction, where it's for the reader to kind of see what's between the lines, because there were some
thanks.
There were some very deep moments, but I guess because it's a children's fiction, you can't dive into how heavy they are, but you can, I think as an adult and kind of seeing what's happening, you can kind of see what those moments, which I think
Thank you.
really, no.
Yeah, I think children understand a lot more than we give them credit for, and they think a lot, and they internalize stuff as well. And sometimes you do hear the phrase I went back to this children's book and there was so much more in it than I remembered.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But actually, I think children they enjoy that stuff, but they enjoy it as background. They might not read the theme so explicitly as an adult might. They might not be able to read between the lines, like you were saying, as an adult might, but they still take it in and absorb it somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that's that's really, really well put. And I think it's just, I think for someone to say, oh, but like a child won't understand these themes. I think, a child might not be able to articulate them, but that doesn't mean that they can't see what's happening,
Yeah.
and then take what they've learned elsewhere.
Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
Which I think is like a really so I think I can see why there's like why like writing children's literature can be exciting in that way, because in the hope of how it could inspire children.
Definitely. And as part of my job, I go into a lot of schools and I sort of interact with a lot of children, and we do an event where we sort of create our own magical world, and hearing them kind of spark off ideas, and even after the event's over, they'll be coming up to me to tell me even more things they want to include. And it's, I think, it feels like an enormous privilege to sort of witness that imagination and be a part of helping them through that and helping them come up with ideas.
Nice. Yeah. Like, for anyone who doesn't know, can you like briefly give like a brief overview of your book Kingdom Over the Sea? And it'd be really interesting to know like where like the ideas and themes came from.
Yeah. So The Kingdom Over the Sea is the story of Yara Sulamaya. She's a 12-year-old girl who she's grown up in our world in Bournemouth, but she knows that her and her mum are from somewhere else, but she doesn't know where. No one around them at all speaks their language. Sometimes people try to speak to her in Arabic or Farsi, and she never understands them. But her mum's very sort of cagey about where it is they are from. And then after her mum passes away, she discovers a letter telling her that she needs to go, I think, to the end of Poole Harbour, near where they live, and read out a poem to summon a ship to take them to Zohra, which is a sort of fantastical kingdom with sorcerers and alchemists. It's sort of a place where magic's been forbidden, and she needs to go out and seek out a sorceress called Layla Khartoum. Nice.
That's really cool. And I mean, maybe it's because I think as observers and readers, it's I was just quite curious of where did the different those fantasy elements ideas come from? Like what how did you come up? Where did the idea come from to write a book like that?
Yeah, I think in a way, my law degree was actually quite
okay.
There was a bit of inspiration there. I think firstly because I read a lot of cases involved which were about immigration, and when I went and did mini pupilages, I shadowed a lot of immigration cases and a lot of immigration barristers, and I think immigration and the movement of people is a massive theme in The Kingdom Over the Sea. Everyone in that book has been involved in displacement or involved in the sort of moving around. And actually, I think someone who read it at the end said, "Oh, in one of a bit close to the end, there is a tribunal where people have to state their case, and there's reasons given."
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of experiencing all of that and reading so much about that was a massive part of writing Kingdom Over the Sea. And there's also quite a lot of academic rivalries and sort of depictions of academia, which were quite inspired by my time at Cambridge. I wanted to write about the way academia engages with people outside it and explore that to a sort of limited extent. I think it's less in the sort of finished book than it is in this book. I go into it more in the sequel, but that was really inspirational for me. And then I was inspired by my own sort of family background, my grandparents and their family, and the amount of times they've moved in their life and the different circumstances surrounding it were really, I was living with them at the time because they lived in my parents' house. And I think they were a massive inspiration for me when I was coming up with that story.
Nice. Wow, that's so cool.
It was real multi-generational living during the pandemic. It was my grandparents, my parents, me and my two siblings. my aunt and uncle around the corner. It was a big.
I was just wondering, was there anything in Cambridge or Trinity Hall that influenced like the themes in your novels?
I think being somewhere as beautiful as Cambridge was very inspirational for me. I mean, so the world in the Kingdom Over the Sea is based or very heavily inspired by the history of the golden age of the Islamic world.
Nice, okay.
And all of those like beautiful cities like Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo, all of those places which were just epicenters of learning and of discovery, and where where the world was being changed. I was really excited by that, and I loved reading about that. And then in The City Beyond the Stars, the world, the sort of history of that is based on sort of people's perception of ancient history at that time. So how people in the medieval period looked back at the, what we think of as being, I guess, like technically the Neo-Assyrian period, and how like that was inspirational for me. And then Deep Dark, so the beginning of my new series, is all set in a sort of 19th century version of London.
Okay.
And I think being in Cambridge for a period of time where you've got lots of historical architecture around you, even if it's not the correct historical architecture, it makes it always made me feel immersed in a kind of past and immersed in a kind of history that was really useful for me when I came to writing these books. I think there's also something about the setup of studying here. So basically you're working, you're going to lectures and supervisions in the first 2 terms. And then in third term, it's very free reign. And you're basically just supposed to go off and study for all of that time until your exams. And then you have a bit of time off after exams. And I think I always meant to revise really hard and really sort of train for these exams. But I think probably because I'd been, working quite intensely all through the term, I never seemed to be able to do it. I would always just have to rely basically on the work I'd already done. I would revise, I would go over everything, but I would never very effectively. And what I did during that time was I wrote these stories. And it was almost like I always had no impulse control during that time. I would sit down and I would mean to, revise Roman law and really get to grips with it. And instead I would write a story set in a boarding school with a sort of evil witch, which is now going on to be the sort of inspiration for my 4th book.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I think oddly enough, that setup of just you're supposed to just go to your room or go to the library and work, and we've got no supervisions and no lectures. It was actually incredibly helpful for me to sort of start writing.
Nice. Wow, that's so cool. That does remind me of Franz Kafka, of like kind of being a, not bureaucracy, but I guess within studying, but like in the motions, in the thick of it, needing to do the next thing, your next essay, but having this huge creative spirit and just wanting to.
Yeah, I guess, or maybe just a huge need to procrastinate. So it was that. I wonder if. I think I've talked about how the sort of academic environment inspired me when I was writing about academics. And in my new book, in Deep Dark, there is a lot more sort of visible law in it. So one of the characters, Felix, is an aspiring. He's a pupil barrister at Gray's Inn, and he's definitely he talks like a lawyer. He's got his sort of. And he's definitely inspired. He's definitely a bit inspired by some of the lawyers I knew while I was here. Very, very quick, very astute, very good at getting their point across.
Nice. The one thing I wanted to touch on was that I hadn't realised this when I was reading your book. So, because from what I know, there's a lot of children's fiction on like medieval fantasy, King Arthur stories, but they tend to be quite Western or European centric.
Yeah.
And I can't think of a children's fiction novel that's medieval but going through like the Golden Age. And was that like a specific like decision to kind of focus on that?
Definitely. I mean, it was it was something, just a period of history I'd been interested in for a long time, as something I thought could make a brilliant basis for a fantasy world in a way that the medieval period had inspired the authors that I loved. I think, but what I realised when I started writing is there were brilliant fantasies written by authors with similar backgrounds to mine. I just hadn't heard of them. And I think children today, they do have those stories available to them now. And I have, I've given quotes for authors who've come after me who have also written fantasies which are non-Western. There's a brilliant one which is set in Egypt with a time travel academy, and everyone there is from different phases of Egypt's past. So you've got like the Fatimids with the ancient Egyptians, with Egyptians from the future. It's really cool. There's a brilliant one that my publisher published called Dream Hunters, with a writer who's based in Cambridge actually, with a world where like dreams can be bottled. It's fantastic.
Oh wow.
I think it's definitely still in its kind of early stages, but I didn't feel like I was sort of on my own when I started writing these stories. I was recognizing that I was joining a community of writers who I think are really changing things in a really exciting way. There's that, it's publishing is interesting, and there's still a long way to go. I think this year, for the first time, we saw a fall in non-white authors and non-white characters for the first time since records began, which is concerning. I'm hoping that's temporary. I'm hoping that's not and representative of what we can do, because there are so many brilliant authors out there creating these worlds, and it's so important that children can see themselves in books and connect with worlds that and that children who from every single background can understand, can enjoy and appreciate a world which isn't the Western world that's so presented to us in traditional fantasy.
I mean, it's just everyone has a lot to gain from there being more stories covering like all narratives and the variety of histories that people can come from. Like it's just, I think it's exciting when you read a story about a background that hasn't really been covered before, like naturally.
Yeah, thanks. I think I would have. I remember I got my friend. So I was mentored by a brilliant author called Aisha Bushby, who someone who'd written fantasy based on the 1001 Nights, and she wrote these two beautifully illustrated books, The Moonchild Duology. I remember my dad picking up one and sort of flicking through it and been like, I think this would have been really special to me when I was a child to have a book like this. And it matters. It's important.
Nice, yeah. It's like it overlaps a lot with ideas about outreach and access. There's like an argument that if you have a more if you have like a diverse if you have like people from different backgrounds doing a course, they're naturally going to have different approaches to their study, and therefore like the academics and academia like becomes richer for it.
Absolutely, I completely agree. The non-inclusion only makes things poorer and more stagnant and more stale. If we value an actual marketplace of ideas, if it exists, it has to include everyone, and it has to make sure that people who aren't being given opportunities are given help and given a platform to make themselves heard. Otherwise, we're all the poorer for it when people don't feel like they can contribute and don't feel like what they can bring to the table is valued as much. It is an interesting one because at the same time, you want to be considered. I always consider my books as part of like a history of fantasy that does go back for ages. I never want my books to be solely perceived as a kind of non-Western fantasy, if that makes sense. Because and I think there is that tendency, you know, the first comparison for my book will always be the Disney film Aladdin, an incredibly problematic depiction of Middle Eastern culture. And I mean, like even the word Middle Eastern culture, which you have to use because the variety of sources it draws on is so bad. But I think if we want authors of from non-Western backgrounds or non-white backgrounds to thrive and to be, you know, to have a sort of, we need to recognise that they're bringing something new, bringing something important, but also part of the same traditions as their white counterparts are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as in that the fact that they come from like a minority background isn't the only thing they're bringing to the table.
Exactly. They're not just here, like, well, we're not just here to. I think I remember going to the Tolkien lecture when Rebecca Kwong was giving it, and she said, "We're not just here to be tour guides. We're not just here to, you know, show you a new world. We're not just here to, you know, I think enrich your experience or offer you something that's so important." You know, that's a word that often gets used, and I think I've used it myself around non-white writers is it's so important, like it's so timely, it's so all of these things, which is true, but it's not the only thing.
Yeah, and it's not it's a byproduct. Like I think everyone, I think you are like first and foremost a writer, like how everyone is, and then everyone brings their own personal history, whether that's whatever that is.
Exactly. I think it's intrinsic, but it's not. It's as definitive as you want it to be, I suppose. But I did want it to be a part of Kingdom. Like I said, it's a book about immigration. It's a book about you know, the experiencing culture as someone who's lived in England but isn't completely English. You know, there are all those aspects to it. But it was interesting when we were marketing the book, I wanted to be like, I really want to promote the aspects of this book where, like, you know, it's a fantasy, it will sweep you away to somewhere new, but it will, you know, it's got funny elements, it's got, I hope, it's, you know, got rich characters, you know, all of these things. Let's bring all of them out.
It's a good novel, and the fact that it has certain elements of a part of history that hasn't been depicted as much, or part of a history that you're interested in, isn't the only thing that the book is about. Yeah,
definitely. Having said that, I do hope that maybe some kids go away and think, because whenever I do events, I explain what it was inspired by. I hope some of them do think, okay, I'm going to go away and look that up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think how we started this conversation was me only realizing after reading the book that of how much influence there was from like the gold. Like it was only when you mentioned the Golden Age that I kind of realized that I kind of only read it as the story that was being told, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
But then maybe that's, I don't know. I mean, I come from a Bangladeshi background, which isn't the same as the Middle East. But I guess when I was reading the book, the names and the language, I didn't really it was all the same to me, if that makes sense.
Well, I think there is a commonality. I mean, the thing about the Golden Age is you're not viewing things as nation states. There's just, you know, there's the Islamic world, which stretches to all these different places. I think I read this book called The Ultimate Ambition and the Art of Erudition, which is a sort of medieval encyclopedia of the Islamic world. And the way he talks about cities, which if you think about it, you know, Cairo and Sindh are quite far apart, but he talks about them as if they're part of the same sphere, they're part of the same. And that was a really fascinating idea for me, of all these places with a lot of diversity, a lot of difference, being connected in that way. I think it was really special.
Nice. And was wondering, like, how with regards to publishing, like, how did that process come about? Was it difficult? Is it a straightforward process?
I think it was very straightforward for me. It doesn't have to be. The thing I think about publishing is you're always going to encounter difficulty at some point. So if the beginning is easy, then you'll stumble at something later. No one has a completely straightforward path. My agent calls it a game of snakes and ladders. But the beginning of it was fairly straightforward for me. I'd entered an essay competition at the end of my second year, and I'd got a cash prize from that. And I was able to put that towards doing the creative writing course I mentioned before. I did the creative writing course. I got a lot of good advice I really honed my writing ability, I think, on that course. I queried, I think about 9 agents maybe. I got pretty much an instant reply from, not the agent I'd initially sent the email to, but from her assistant, who said, well, this agent's closed at the moment to queries at the moment, but I'd love to take a look. I'm just building my list. And then she offered representation, and then that very quickly kicked everything off. So that was within 3 days of sending out my first query. And then at the end of 2 weeks, I'd signed with my my agent, Julia Churchill, who was brilliant. I couldn't live without her. And then we worked on the book that summer, and then she sent it out to publishers, and it was preempted, which means that my publisher, Simon Schuster, came in very quickly. I think about 48 hours after we'd sent it out, and they didn't, they basically took it off the table straight away. So they were the only people I heard from. Nice. And it all happened. I think I believe I sent out my first query on the 1st of June, and I'd signed a book deal by the sort of early September.
Nice. Wow. That's so cool.
It was very surreal. I think I had a massive panic after it was all over. Especially it was during the pandemic. The whole year felt like a bit of a dream.
Yeah.
There was a lot of dead time during the year. I'd not planned for it to happen. I'd planned for this to have been a fun fun thing to do, or a good thing to do while I was waiting to do my master's degree. And I think I was very overwhelmed by everything that happened.
Nice. Yeah, but it's an inspiring story for any other writers listening. Yeah. We're wondering, have you got any other books planned in the pipeline? Or I guess you were mentioning there was one coming out.
Yeah, so it's coming out March 27th, which is next week. It's called Deep Dark. It's the first of the Cassia Thorne mysteries. And it's about a girl who's grown up in a debtor's prison. She's sort of making her living selling ballads on the streets. And then one of her, this is all in 19th century London, and then her pickpocket friend Theo tells her that children are going missing. And she sort of discovers this conspiracy that takes her to the city of London and to the deep dark, the titular deep dark below the city. We're saying it's a Dickensian fantasy for a sort of Oliver Twist meets Enola Holmes with a little monstrous twist.
Oh, nice. That is really cool. It reminds me of the beginning of His Dark Materials.
Oh, great comparison.
Yeah.
Well, one of the books that was really inspirational for it was a Pullman book, the Ruby and the Smoke series, which is a brilliant sort of series of stories about, really centered around the opium trade and all the different repercussions of it in 19th century England. It's a really great read. I'd recommend.
Nice. And is this book the similar target audience to Kingdom Over the Sea?
Yes, absolutely. And very much still in that middle grade space, which is what we call it. It's definitely got it's maybe a bit scarier than Kingdom, and a tiny bit darker, but I still think children can enjoy it. There's still lots of sort of characters and sequences that I hope children will enjoy.
Nice. And lastly, just wants to end the podcast with like wondering if you would like have the chance like to do Cambridge and studying again, would there be anything that you'd do differently to how you did?
It's interesting. I think there's a real tendency at any university, but maybe definitely at Cambridge, to worry that you're not having a good enough time or worry that you're not doing enough. And I think part of that is not looking back and having regrets, but also part of it is just saying, you know, just relax. You're at the end of the day, you're a university student. You're not expected to have all the answers. You're not expected to be living life perfectly. Even the people you see running around who you think, oh my goodness, they're in every society and they're doing so well academically, even there no one is living that sort of perfect Cambridge experience that you might have mythologized in your head. Just concentrate on being, you know, a uni student with making friends and going to parties and you know, working hard definitely, but don't feel there's this sort of romantic ideal that you have to live up to, I guess.
So yeah, so like everything, keeping everything the same, but not putting as pressure on yourself, and kind of recognizing that the grass isn't actually greener.
Yeah, I mean, I could say don't put so much pressure on yourself as my thing that I would do differently, but ultimately it's hard to regret that, because even though I think I could have relaxed a little bit, I know that I am where I am because of that pressure. Like I never would have entered the essay competition that I did over that second year summer that helped me get onto a creative writing course if I hadn't been slightly disappointed with my second year marks.
Yeah,
and I feel like if I'd been putting less pressure on myself, I might have struggled and gone, oh well, better luck next time. It's a hard one, because objectively I know that is not a healthy way for a 20-year-old maybe to be thinking about marks in their degree. But at the same time, it's, you know, I am where I am because of the experience that I had while I was here. So it's hard. Maybe I don't think I would change anything.
No, yeah, I think that's completely fair. To look back and think actually, like, you actually liked how it all played out.
Yeah, I think as a result of my time at uni, I have a job that I love. I have friends that I love. Even though any aspects of my experience that were less than ideal, or that I wish hadn't happened, all went towards building that. I always think, and now whenever I sort of have a time in my life that's maybe a bit difficult, or I'm struggling with something, I always think, well, this is all gonna contribute to the future picture of your life.
Nice. That's really cool. Amazing. What a message to end, end the podcast on.
Well, what a soundbite.
Nice. Well, thank you, Zohra, for such a really interesting podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. And they're our first alumni, and we're hoping to get more alumni on the podcast.
Great. I'm very honoured.
Yeah. No, I think it's really cool to hear from people about their time at university, in from like a more retrospective looking back, because then you get to hear all the things of like I don't know, they have a quite a clear-sighted view, so thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, no, now it was, I think 7 years ago since I first came to Trinity Hall.
Nice. Yeah, and so much has happened since.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for the viewers for watching, whether it's on YouTube or your podcasting platform. We'll be coming out with more podcasts soon, so stay tuned. Nice.
Thank you very much.